Right. Well, the pollsters who work with contests that are going to be decided by a gender gap typically say you need to win with women more than you lose with men. And we're seeing that in these data right now. So men are 52-38 for Trump, but the margin is wider, 56-36, a 20-point gap.
What? Wait, what? It's a 20-point gap in her data? Jesus Christ.
With women for Harris.
Friends, if you have a second or two, click like, comment down below. I would really appreciate it. Thank you guys, and I hope you enjoy the video. Let's talk about the Selzer poll. Let's just, she did a interview with the Bulwark. Now, if you guys are familiar, Ann Selzer is a bit of a legend when it comes to pollsters. She's a pollster specific to Iowa. Her prediction was within 2 or 3 points in 2020, which contradicted, I think, a lot of data at the time, which had Iowa a bit more competitive for Biden than it actually was. In 2016, she was one of the few pollsters that very accurately predicted the Iowa outcome. In 2016, she was within like 2 points. She was super accurate in the 2022 races as well. In fact, I think you have to go back to 2004 to find the last, quote unquote, like big polling error for a presidential race. So all eyes were on Ann Selzer this weekend. When I was, what I was expecting like Trump +3, Trump +4, because that would be kind of like in line with sort of the shifts that we can observe. And Ann Selzer on Saturday hit us with a Harris +3 in Iowa. And it just like broke the internet. Well, like political internet. It broke the internet for a good like 6 or 7 hours. Trump started talking shit about her. He praised her in the past because she was showing margins that were more favorable to Trump when other pollsters weren't. And so he had favorable words to say about her in 2016, 2020 when she was giving him good numbers. And then he was accusing her this weekend of being like, I don't know, she was like a voter suppression poll or something like that. I don't know what he said. But, this poll is a big deal. I mean, she could be wrong, right? She could be wrong. But even if she's wrong, guys, let's say she's wrong by 7 points. Let's say she's wrong by 7 points. And again, this is a really good pollster. Let's say this really good pollster is wrong by 7 points. That would be Trump +4 in Iowa. Trump won Iowa in 2020 by 9 points, if I recall correctly. And so if we observe a 5-point shift towards Iowa in favor of Kamala in 2024, that spells disaster for Trump in that region. All of a sudden you start wanting to have conversations about like Blexus. Can we talk about Blexus? Like, I'm not saying it's likely she's going to win Texas, but when you see a poll like that, it just makes you wonder. It just makes you wonder. And of course, Econoboy on our podcast, he went full on hopium. Econoboy thinks that she...
Welcome to Hutch's stream, the only political stream on Twitch that endorses shitting in cars and not recognizing when your face is superimposed on Donald Trump.
Oh, God. Wait, was my face on that Trump? I didn't notice that. Connery, $2. Thank you so much. Hangman with 2 months. Cadbid with 14 months. Jay Pluska with 29 months. Are you ready for that Biden tattoo? I forgot that I said that. I kind of vaguely recalled it yesterday.
You just subscribe.
But I did commit to getting a Biden face tattoo, not a Biden tattoo on my face, a tattoo of Biden's face on my body. And so if she wins, I'll do it. I'll do it. I don't care. I'm not going to do it on my lower back. No, it'll be like a Dark Brandon tattoo, or it'll be like him eating ice cream or something like that. Something memey. Maybe I'll involve you guys. You guys can vote. I'll give you 4 options and you can vote. We can do it that way. Maybe we need a Biden tattoo that says we beat Medicare. Oh my God. Gino, thank you so much for 33 months. I'm not doing any text. There's not going to be any text. Okay.
Who in the hell does he think he is? Who does he think he is?
Where do you want the tat? It'll probably be like up here, like something I can hide with a shirt. I'm not gonna do it on my lower back. I thought about doing it on the front side of my upper thigh, But then Esme said it would distract her when we're doing sexy time. We'll never be able to go to the beach again. I don't give a I just won't go to the beach in like Alabama. I feel like no one talks about Alabama beaches, but they have to have beaches, right? It's a coastal state. I've never heard anyone talk about Alabama beaches. I don't think I've ever seen any images of Alabama beaches. Oh, is it just a big old swamp? Okay, that makes sense. Anyways, here is Ann Selzer talking about this astonishing poll. I mean, this is her poll that came out on Saturday, you guys, is one of the most shocking polls in election history. We really can't understate, or overstate. Exactly. Her reputation is so good that it single-handedly changed the betting markets. The betting markets responded to her singular poll. In an election with, it's like dozens of polls a week, hers single-handedly changed the betting markets. That's how much she's respected. I don't know if I buy it. It's just so difficult to buy, but I don't want to bet against her. So it's a predicament. Like, I don't want to tell you that I think Kamala can win Iowa, because I don't, but I also don't want to tell you that Ann Selzer is wrong.
People looked at my methodology, and it's published. There's no secret sauce. People sometimes think that.
What she found was not just strength, but dominance. Dominance from Kamala Harris with respect to women voters. Over 65 and independent women voters are, according to her data, breaking for Kamala at astonishing levels. Astonishing. It's like 2 out of 3 65 plus women in the state of Iowa are swinging for Kamala, and she's just crushing it with women independents as well.
That it's published in every article in the Des Moines Register, right there, how we do it. But you look at it on paper and you go, it's too simple. This can't possibly work. And so far it has, but I'm prepared that one day it will not work, and that I'll blow up into tiny little pieces and be scattered across the city of Des Moines.
Hello and welcome to a bonus Sunday edition of the Bulwark Podcast. I'm your host, Tim Miller. We got the shock Seltzer.
I mean, is it that crazy? Biden won pretty convincingly in 2020, and since then, January 6th and Dobbs happened. Maybe the country is finally. It's shocking when we compare it to the rest of the polls. That's what makes it shocking. And Biden did win in 2020 in terms of the popular vote. He won by 7 million votes, but the Electoral College win that he got in 2020 was narrower than the one that Trump got in 2016, which was also super narrow. And when we look at Iowa from 2020, I believe Trump won by 9 points. Iowa presidential election. He did. Well, more like 8 points, closer to 8 points. So that's shocking to go from a state that swung for Trump by 8 points in 2020 to Kamala by 3 points, an 11-point swing toward Kamala in the last 4 years. It's a bit shocking. Yes, stranger things have happened in politics. It's true. But when we look at the polling and we compare hers to the rest of the polling, it's shocking. On a scale of 1 to 10, how nervous are you about tomorrow? I'm telling you guys, call it complacency, call it arrogance, call it naivete. I am not nervous right now. And you guys know me. I would tell you if I was nervous. I don't feel nervous right now. I feel really good going into this election. Really good. In some ways, I feel better about 2020, but I actually don't want to say that because the polls in 2020 were pointing to Biden just blowing Trump out. But I think we'll get some anxiety tomorrow. It's going to be hard not to feel some anxiety, but I feel really good about the state of this election. I think Donald Trump closed his campaign in just the worst ways imaginable, just violating every fundamental you can imagine for how to run a campaign. And Kamala closed out really strong. I think Trump is fighting uphill right now. And I think the story of the last week has been his party and his campaign just kind of flailing. They don't look like serious people to me, you know. And there's also stuff that we don't see with our own eyes. But I think Kamala announced that there were 90,000 people over the weekend that knocked on over 3 million doors. So there's this ground game that's like really important in close elections. And Donald Trump's ground game in these states are just, you know, either it doesn't exist, or you have situations like with Elon, where he paid people to go to Michigan. And then his operation was driving people around in U-Hauls without seats in the back. And then that got reported to the media. So Elon's PAC fired those workers who flew to Michigan and didn't pay those workers. So like, it's just a shit show in terms of ground game operations. So when you consider that fundamental, it's like, thank God we have like a competent party structure right now, a party apparatus that is knocking on doors, that is doing important work in states like Arizona and Nevada. Hasn't it only gone down for Harris lately? No, not. She had some good polls this week. She had some good polls. There was a Marist poll that came out today that was really good for her. There was a New York Times poll that was like spotty for her in the Rust Belt, but New York Times Siena poll came out with a poll showing her like doing really well in the Sun Belt. In North Carolina and Georgia and Arizona and Nevada. And then of course there's the Selzer poll in Iowa, which, you know, Mike DeHammer wants to focus on the Emerson poll. That's fine. You can do that. They're a bit of a meme this cycle, but if you're a Trump person, you have to focus on like the only polls that are nice to you. And so you'll talk about Atlas, you'll talk about like Redfield, you'll talk about Memerson, you know.
Iowa poll last night, 47 to 44 among likely voters in favor of Vice President Kamala Harris in Iowa. So obviously we had to have an emergency pod with the queen herself, Ann Selzer, president of the polling firm Selzer and Company. She's best known for conducting the Iowa poll for the Des Moines Register. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Tim. Good to be with you.
No tiara for the queen today.
I leave my tiaras and my crystal balls at home.
Okay. Well, let's just start first with what happened to the poll. I got to tell you, I looked at it 3 times before I realized that Kamala was winning. I just saw 47-44, and I was like, that's pretty good for the vice president, down 3. And then it took me about 2 minutes for it to like register that she was up 3. So anyway, I'm wondering at the top level what you saw as happening in the poll, and then we'll kind of go through the particulars.
I don't think anybody.
I had the same exact experience. When I pulled up her poll, I was at Cirque du Soleil this weekend in Santa Monica with Esme. We had a really good time. Cirque du Soleil is cool, man. If you've never seen Cirque du Soleil, you should go see it. It's awesome. It's talk about anxiety inducing. Wow. But we're standing in line to go into the show, and I knew that her poll was coming out at 4 p.m. our time. And I'm refreshing my phone. And I look down and I see the 47-43 or whatever it was, or was it 50-47? I can't remember what the numbers were. And in my mind, it was the exact same response as Tim Miller just described. I was like, oh, this is actually really good for her. Wow. And then I looked at the names. I was like, wait a second. Wait, Kamala's 47? I had to just like, and I remember like looking at Esme, like trying to make sense of what I was reading. I was like, this can't be right. And so I looked up other polls, like I looked up other pollsters that I follow online. I was like, this has to be a typo. And then I looked, everybody else was posting the same numbers. It took me like 5 minutes to process the information that I had read.
They would look at the numbers.
Swanee Bird with $5. Have you seen Alan Lichtman's 2024 prediction from a couple months ago? Would love to hear what you think regardless. Thanks for the vids, man. I think Lichtman is like, so he's a bit of an eccentric guy to me, and I feel like his keys are kind of like astrology. You can argue the strength of his keys based on his track record. He does do a good job of accurately predicting races. That can't be denied, but I think there, you know, as far as Lichtman goes, I feel like he kind of gets lucky.
You just subscribed.
Llama Styles with 3 months. Thank you so much. Why do I hear Hutch's voice coming in from the bedroom? Quit libbing her up. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
And not be, in a somewhat state of shock. We started interviewing Monday night, so Tuesday morning I walked in, my assistant was already crunching numbers, and she said, "Did you see the unweighted data?" I go, "Yeah, I'd like to see the weighted data." Yeah. So we're always very cautious about embracing things too much. I'm always telling my clients, don't get married to these numbers because they can change.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but Iowa went for Obama in both 2008 and 2012, right? 2012 went to Obama by 5 points. Jesus Christ. What did Trump do to the Midwest? In 2008, went to Obama by nearly 10 points. Jesus. What? Seriously, what the did Trump do to the Midwest?
But all they did was...
Why do they even call it the Midwest? I feel like it's such a stupid name. Like, this is the Midwest? Like, what does that even mean? Is Ohio Midwest? What are the Midwest states? Is it like a centuries old name? It says Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas. Kansas? I mean, that kind of makes sense. If we're gonna say Midwest, it should be limited to these states. Like Montana is Midwest. Colorado is Midwest. How the f is Illinois Midwest? Doesn't make any sense.
Confirm what we were seeing in the unweighted data after Monday night, that Harris was in the lead in Iowa. And that was... nobody in their right mind would predict it. Our methodology is to make no assumptions, and we made no assumptions, and here we are.
Yeah, I mean, quite a remarkable change from your poll over the early summer that had President Biden down 18 to a poll in September.
That's the other thing we didn't even mention. Like, her same poll had Biden down 18 points. So to go from that to what we ended up now, that's a 21-point swing towards Democrats.
That had it significantly closer to this one.
It's crazy.
Like, what are you seeing as having been the impetus for such a dramatic turnaround?
I can't give you a data-driven answer, which would be my preference.
Sure.
What it seems like, given that just this morning we released the findings from the congressional races, and we are now showing 2 Iowa districts tilting toward the Democratic candidate, and that includes a big lead in the 1st district, which is 53-37. And that district in particular has the driving issue.
Dude, Mike is so pissed about these polls. If I go back, like, what was the first thing you said in this stream? Harris is weak as in the Rust Belt. That was your first ever comment on 10/9/2024. Now, we should play the game now. Is it MAGA or is it an anti-electoral lefty? We need some game show music. I don't know. It's a coin flip, right? Statistically. Mike, are you MAGA or are you Jill Stein voter?
From what I read, has been the abortion issue. And it was over the summer that Iowa's 6-week ban on abortion went into effect after all the court challenges were taken care of. So that the decision being made, the law going into force, and then people living with it for a while, and it being a strong sort of...
That's one of the theories of the polls right now. One of the theories that I've seen consistently is that they are not properly weighting women. They're not properly accounting for the surge in women registered voters in every single battleground state. If that's true, that they just missed that surge and they're not weighting women properly, like, the gender gap is going to be the big story of this election. We are probably going to see the widest gender gap in this election than in any election prior. Most of the gender gaps that I see in crosstabs are like 10 points, which is kind of a big cavern. Roe is obviously a huge factor here, but don't discount like Trump himself. Would never vote for anyone that has ever proposed a mandatory gun buyback. All right, so it is MAGA. But yeah, if the pollsters have not properly accounted for this new influx of women voters, then we may see a polling miss this year that was orders of magnitude worse than 2016 and 2020. And ironically, if it happens, it will be because they're trying to correct from previous misses.
Compelling thing from Iowa's in the congressional districts. Iowa right now, all 4 congressional districts are held by Republicans. So
yeah.
To me, it seems like to a certain extent there's something organic going on because the presidential candidates certainly aren't spending any money or time here. And it may be, in fact, that these congressional races are driving the presidential race toward the Democrat.
I want to get into the congressional races a little deeper, but just a couple other things at the presidential level first. The gender gap is particularly noteworthy, and you look at independent women, older women in particular. Talk about what you found on that, and which obviously could also speak to the abortion question.
Right. Well, the pollsters who work with contests that are going to be decided by a gender gap typically say you need to win with women more than you lose with men. And we're seeing that in these data right now. So men are 52-38 for Trump, but the margin is wider, 56-36, a 20-point gap.
What? Wait, what? It's a 20-point gap in her data? Jesus Christ.
With women for Harris. The gap for women age 65 and over, and this, the age 65 and over group, I've been watching this whole cycle because they, in past cycles, have tilted more Republican, but now they are strongly tilted toward Harris, and the margin among women 65 and over is more than 2-1. It's 63-28.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Again, that's sort of a jaw-dropping number.
Yeah, I wonder, did you? I didn't actually look at this. Do you do a religion crosstab? Like, do we know, like, our church going? I do wonder how that cuts, particularly among women.
I can't give you among women, but I can give you evangelicals, which is the group.
Right.
NF with $5. Thanks so much for the super chat. Hey Hutch, I appreciate the hopium. I'm a full-time caregiver for my dad, so Harris's Medicare expansion could change my life. Dude, if we want that Medicare expansion to get done, we need to take the Senate, guys. We need to hold the Senate. We need to take the House. So anybody who's voting across the country today and tomorrow, please do not sleep on the down ballot races. They are just as important in many ways.
That has been consistently and staunchly supportive of President Trump. And that's more than 3-1. So they haven't shaken off of their affection for the former president.
As people are looking at this, everyone's trying to explain it. They're like, okay, it's just such a dramatic result. I guess I should have noted at the top, you've been gone contrary to the conventional wisdom several times. The Obama caucuses in 2008 were right about that. I remember the feeling in the pit of my stomach still.
California Prop 33, the rent control. Guys, I voted against the rent control measure in California.
I don't know. I simply don't know. You can speculate, but I
voted against it because it sure does seem like rent control is good for the renters. And that's kind of it. It doesn't incentivize the kind of things that we need to lower rents across the board. I mean, I understand why people, it's not like it's all bad. It's not like, it's not like you can't make good arguments for rent controls, but everything that I've looked into when it comes to renters, like rent control measures from people that I trust, whose opinion that I trust. And I'm just not like, listen, I'm not an econ major. Okay. But I just can't find any people that I like, whose opinions I respect, that support rent controls. The better alternative is to incentivize more housing, more building, more development.
saying your poll in 2016, showing Donald Trump winning by a wider margin than expected significantly in Iowa, which turned out correct.
I would say, I just insert here, I have a nickname I have a couple of nicknames. One is the Outlier Queen, because people keep seeing my numbers not match others. So I've been in this seat before. The second is starting with the senatorial race between Bruce Braley and Joni Ernst. Our poll was the only one showing Joni Ernst with a comfortable lead, and I became known among those campaign workers as the harbinger of doom.
Well, the one time that was not on my side. That was my final cycle as a Republican in good standing. So I was actually consulting on the harbinger of good news side of that Senate race. But so you've been here before in the but anytime there's an outlier, look, sometimes they're just outliers, right? Like sometimes they're just like, that's just statistical modeling. Sometimes they're just outliers that don't turn out to be harbingers of doom or glory. But your outliers have tended to direct towards what the end result was going to be. But when there is an outlier, people are like, okay, what could it be? And one thing that there was a series of New York Times Siena polls today that Nate Cohn observed was that among older voters, like Democrats are more likely to answer, right? Like there potentially is do you worry at all about kind of response bias where like older Democrats for whatever reason are more interested in taking the poll?
Well, our method controls for that. So our method is we're looking to end up with 800 likely voters. But for people we talk to who don't qualify as a likely voter, that is, they've already voted, or they say they will definitely vote. That's the two ways you get into my pool. Then we go ahead and collect your age, your sex, and what county you live in. I think race as well. So we have...
One of the things that I'm dying to know, and of course we're not going to know until we get the results, but one of the things that I'm dying to know is if Kamala's strategy of messaging towards centrists, moderates, and never Trump Republicans, whether or not that strategy was sound. I think it was. I've been saying this whole time that I love seeing her, talking about like, I own a gun and let's make the military lethal and, USA and like reclaiming the patriotism stuff and saying that she's going to appoint Republicans in her cabinet, campaigning with Liz Cheney. I have been such a staunch supporter of this strategy. We need a big coalition to beat Donald Trump. Say what you will about Donald Trump. He has a really dedicated base. He has a ceiling on popularity, but he does have a dedicated base. And we can reasonably expect him to get around 56, 57% of the vote again. I'm sorry, 46, 47% of the vote again would be my guess. It's going to land somewhere in that number, right? And to counter him, you need to widen that tent. And I'm someone, I call myself progressive liberal. I'm comfortable saying I'm, probably well to the left of the median voter. I'm center left by internet standards, but I'm a very progressive guy, and I would love to see like Nordic state economic policy implemented here in the United States. And even having those policy preferences, I still wholeheartedly endorsed her strategy of really targeting those like moderates and Republicans. I think it was really smart. And I'm so curious, like the numbers that I'm going to be looking at aside from the gender gap, because again, I think the overarching story of this election is going to be about the gender gap. I think after the results of the election come in, one way or the other, it's going to be a conversation about the tension between men and women in this country. XQC bet 700,000 for Harris to win. I mean, I wouldn't bet that much. I don't have that much to begin with, but I think he's probably going to make a little bit of money with that. Yeah, I would assume so. Give me your percentage odds for tomorrow. I don't even know how to like frame it in that way, because I think the outcome of the election is set. I think the late breakers at this point have probably made up their minds. Probably a very, very, very small percentage of people that are still thinking about like who they're going to vote for. And so I think in many ways, I think we are on a fixed path toward one outcome or the other. And so when I frame it like that, I think she is going to win. I'm not going to tell you like, oh, it's an 80% chance. I think it's a 100% chance that she's going to win. That's just where I'm at with it. Call it copium, call it hopium, call it delusion. I just think there are so many indicators. There are so many indicators to tell us which way the wind is blowing, except for the polls, which are so clearly problematic. And I feel like I'm completely justified in saying that the polls right now, the polling environment right now is just kind of broken in the Trump era.
Demographics for the full Iowa adult 18 and over population, and we weight that to the known population parameters. So now we have a cross-section of all Iowans, and we can extract from that the 800, and I think it was 808 people who qualified. So if older people are more likely to vote, and they are, they show up in my voter sample in more plentiful numbers. So for example, we had contacts with 1,038 all Iowans.
Do you not think the way that Dems have treated Muslim and Arab voters could have been a lot better? I mean, maybe. I'm not going to tell you that they're like any campaign is perfect, but Kamala is not going to do what people. I mean, maybe she will. I don't know. Maybe she will. She's right now. She's beholden to the president, who is currently Joe Biden. He is the one that sets the foreign policy, and his foreign policy with respect to Israel is a bit too cozy for my taste. Now she may get inaugurated and then announce like 2 weeks later that she's going to pursue an arms embargo. Maybe she does that, but I don't think that is what her position is going to be. I think expecting US to do an arms embargo is just completely untethered from reality. And so if you have that expectation from your candidate, if you have this expectation that they're going to pursue an arms embargo, and then that candidate doesn't meet that expectation, that's partly on you for setting this expectation of it's just not going to happen. Now she may surprise me. She may get in there and really break with Biden on policy with respect to Israel. And we can evaluate that when we get there. But I think for a lot of like the pro-Palestinian people, she was never going to meet their standard of like what would need to be satisfied in order to earn their vote. I do think that Kamala will still probably win the overwhelming majority of Muslim voters in this country. She'll win the overwhelming majority of young voters in this country. And so I'm not sure we're going to see I'm not sure we're going to see any kind of like noticeable trends for various demographics away from Kamala because of Gaza. I just don't think that's going to happen. I really don't think that. I think that's a super online take. This idea that she's going to lose Michigan because of the Gaza situation, I think it's just not. If Donald Trump wins by, I don't know, if he wins by 30,000 or 40,000 votes, then maybe you can say that. Maybe you can say that. But I don't think that's going to happen. Oh, whoa. Thank you so much for 17 months.
In order to get enough likely voters at 808. So we've controlled for that idea of response bias by making sure they're not overrepresented at the state level, and then they are what they are at the likely voter level.
Yeah, sure. I guess that would control for the fact that the likelihood of older voters, the correct amount, the likelihood is in the sample.
Faithless said, "Are you going to be doing stuff with Destiny for this election? Are you joining them?" I said no because tomorrow is going to be like a big day for me in terms of streaming, and I just couldn't justify it. I asked them if they could do a simul stream to my stream, and they said they can't do that for whatever reason. And so for me, it just didn't make sense. For other people that don't do a lot of streaming stuff, they're more focused on YouTube or whatever, it makes sense for them to go. And I mean, I want to go. I really do want to be there. It sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun, but I just couldn't justify it.
But does it control for the fact that a specific older voters who are more likely to vote for Donald Trump might not be as likely to answer. I mean, I guess the non-response bias is the question.
Yeah, well, you can't control for that.
Right.
We do know. I mean, we weight if we have too many 65 and overs, we weight them down so that they're not overrepresented at the state level. They might look like a larger population, and they are among the likely voter sample, but that's because they're more likely to vote.
One of the other things, as you mentioned, you're the outlier queen, so you're comfortable with this, but Nate Silver wrote in his...
Just a random aside, guys. Check out the show Shrinking on Apple TV. It's really good.
Silver Bulletin last night talked about the cojones that you had to drop this poll, and he said basically that what we've seen out there in the industry is that there's a lot of what he calls poll herding, right? Where people are weighting things to 2020 recall vote or weighting things to this or that in order to not have a result that ends up as this much of an outlier. I'm curious, clearly that's not something that ever crosses your mind, but I'm curious what you think about the idea that other people are hurting, and that might explain why you're so unique right now.
Well, and please, I am grateful to have clients who we work intimately together. They know my method, they know my history, and so the Des Moines Register had every right to say this is too far off. Nobody will believe it. We're going to can it, but they don't. Right. And I think they think like I think is we've taken our very best shot at what we think is what's true out there. We've tweaked a little bit here and there. There's things that we decided that's a corner cut that we don't want to do. And so I don't lie in bed thinking, I wish we'd done something different. So that, it doesn't mean I'm not nervous about whether my poll will be good or not good. As for other people's methodology, to be honest, that's the first thing I go looking for when a poll is published by anybody, is to see what it is that they're doing. I've kept my mouth quiet about this idea of waiting to the previous recalled vote. So how did people vote in 2020? I have a lot of questions about how that would work out actually arithmetically, but I have talked about my method as polling forward. And so what I want is my data to reveal to me without favor what this future electorate looks like. So when I hear people saying, well, we're trying to figure out what this future electorate looks like, and I kind of think to myself, why bother? How could you? And if you're looking at the past to say that's what the future is going to look like, to me, that's polling backward. Yeah. So you're doing something that will give you results that look like 2020, perhaps. I want results that look like 2024.
I was listening to a interview you did back after 2020, when once again you weren't quite as much of an outlier in 2020, but it was a little bit of an outlier again. It was less favorable to Biden than what
I think she projected Trump to win by maybe 5, and then Trump ended up winning by 7. I mean, it was really, really close what she ended up projecting, and it was out of step with what the other pollsters were saying at the time.
The rest of the national polls were shown, particularly in the region, and it turned out to look more like the electorate that you had prognosticated. But in a one of these post-op interviews, you said you did worry about like how long this method will last, right? Like that there are potential issues still with polling. I have a pollster friend of mine who called me a couple of weeks ago, and he's like, "You're being you're taking these polls too much at face value. It's so hard to poll 18 to 30-year-olds right now, and like we don't know." So I'm just wondering, like, what are the anxieties that you have kind of looking at the current polling methodology?
Well, I'm guessing the anxiety level.
Ralston just predicted that Harris would win Nevada. That's another big deal, right? Like Ralston is to correct me if I'm wrong, but Ralston is to Nevada what Selzer is to Iowa, right? Nevada's only worth, I believe, 6. I should have done the mic drop in 2022, picking the winners in the top 2 races, both of which were agonizingly close. Should have been the swan song, the ride off into the sunset on my oracular career, but no, I just couldn't resist. Couldn't just rest on the laurels of correctly choosing Governor Joe Lombardo and Senator Catherine Cortez Masto. So here we go again. I usually start these prediction columns by reminding you of my historical brilliance. Harry Reid in 2010, Dean Heller in 2012, Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden winning in 2016 and 20 respectively. As if that might ward off the I told you so mafia in Muskland and the real world if I'm wrong. Fool's errand, right? But once you start a tradition, it's hard to simply end it because you are worried about being wrong. I never missed a Nevada presidential call. I have botched races down ballot, but this one is the hardest since I started doing this. More on that below. But that forecast and all of the others are not just based on early voting data, but also on historical experience, my sources on both sides, and yes, my gut. I think it's wrong not to explain a rationale for predictions too, so... Elections, as always, are about a lot of things, but when distilled, they are about math, and the math this year is confusing. The early vote is different from any since this data was kept in such detail, and I began analyzing it. Usually the Democrats, fueled by the machine that Harry Reid built, erect a firewall in populous Clark County that is designed as a bulwark against losses in the 15 red counties, with Washoe County often deciding who wins. But this cycle, with former President Donald Trump and co. discovering it might be smart to encourage Republicans to vote early and even by mail, the GOP vote has been front-loaded. The inverse is true, and the question is whether the Democrats can overcome a 43,000 plus GOP ballot lead as I write this. I won't repeat a lot of my analysis of this. You can read it on the blog. That concludes Trump probably has a 30,000 raw vote lead right now. But my theory of the case is there are still a lot of Clark County mail ballots to be counted that favor Democrats, and the GOP partial cannibalization of its election day vote will propel some Democrats to victory, but perhaps not quite get there with others. So which is which? I can see from top to bottom that the races could go either way, but I've decided to trust the Reid machine that is not lost for 4 consecutive presidential cycles and will somehow get enough ballots turned in during the next few days to do what it always does. All of this falls apart if Indies don't vote for Vice President Kamala Harris, and if the machine can't get enough ballots returned. Not only would Trump win, but there would be upsets down ballot. Close races are crazy to try to predict, but you also have to be a little bit bonkers to have covered politics for almost 4 decades. Just sing the chorus over and over. Onwards. So for president, I've been calling this the unicorn election because of the unusual voting patterns. It's really hard to know what will happen with mail ballots and election day turnout with so many Republicans voting early. But here's what I do know. Both sides, at least people who understand the data on both sides, believe this will be close. That's because if passed as prologue in the mail ballot era, last 2 cycles, tens of thousands of mail ballots will come in between now and Friday, the deadline. It's a simple question. Can Democrats catch up? Really a coin flip, and I know people on both sides who have analyzed the data who can't decide. I've gone back and forth in my own head for days, my eyes glazing over with numbers and models and extrapolations. The key to this election has always been which way the non-major party voters break, because they have become the plurality in the state. They are going to make up 30% or so of the electorate, and if they swing enough toward Harris, she will win Nevada. I think they will, and I'll tell you why. Many people assume that with the GOP catching up to Democrats in voter registration, that the automatic voter registration plan pushed by Democrats that auto-registers people as nonpartisans, unless they choose a party, at the DMV, had been a failure for the party, but I don't think so. There are a lot of nonpartisans who are closet Democrats who were purposefully registered by Democrat-aligned groups as nonpartisans. The machine knows who they are and will get them to vote. It will be just enough to overcome the Republican lead, along with women motivated by abortion and crossover votes that issue will also cause. Is abortion on the ballot in Nevada this year, guys? Is there a measure on the ballot? Counting until Friday, Hutch is going to be live for 4 days. Well, listen, I'm not going to stay up the whole time. I'll go to sleep. I'll sleep on the couch if need be. Question 6 on the ballot. Okay, abortion is on the ballot there. Okay. I know some may think this reflects my well-known disdain for Trump, heart over data, but that is not so. I've often predicted against my own preferences. History does not lie. I just have a feeling she will catch up here, and I also believe, and please remember this, it will not be clear who won on election night here, so block out the nattering nabobs of election denialism. It's going to be very, very close. Prediction, Harris 48.5%, Trump 48.2%. And others and none of these candidates 3.3%. Okay, so he's giving us a specific threshold she's going to meet. He's predicting 48.5% for a Kamala W. Okay.
Will tick up on Tuesday. Yeah. That's sort of par for the course. I've had a good track record and like to say, may it always be so.
Yeah.
Right. But I do think, and I have said, if people looked at my methodology, and it's published, there's no secret sauce. People sometimes think that. It's published in every article in the Des Moines Register, right there, how we do it. But you look at it on paper and you go, it's too simple. This can't possibly work. And so.
Okay. What I want to know is how many, what percentage of Republicans voted for Biden in 2020? According to Pew, 89% of Republicans voted for Trump. Wait, hold on. No, 5%. 5% of Republicans voted for Biden in 2020 is what I'm saying. I'm going to be so curious as to what that number is going to be in 2024, because she did not court like never Trump Republicans for no reason. She wasn't just doing that on a gut feeling. Campaigns, especially presidential campaigns, are really data driven. So clearly her team identified a vulnerability amongst moderate Republican voters in 2024, and that's reflected in her campaign. What I want to know is, can she break double digits? Can she get to 10% or higher? If she can, that is going to be huge. And it will cut against a lot of the early voting takes that we've seen. If she can like double those margins versus Trump in terms of how many Democrats he gets to vote for him. So if he gets 5% of Democrats to vote for him and she gets 10% of Republicans to vote for her, that will be a substantial difference between the two. And it could be one of the reasons that she ends up getting over the finish line, assuming she does.
So far it has, but I'm prepared that one day it will not work, and that I'll blow up into tiny little pieces and be scattered across the city of Des Moines.
Well, may that not be today. The other note, you mentioned the congressional numbers at the top. There are four Republicans hold all four districts in Iowa right now. That Iowa 3rd district, which is around Des Moines, you showed the Democrat winning, but by a margin that feels potentially possible. It's a swing district. Des Moines has a lot of college education.
Are the current predictions closer than 4 years ago? In terms of the overall race, yes. I don't know about I haven't seen any much data about like the intention of each party in terms of voting. Like, I haven't seen any data where it's like they ask, what percentage of Republicans are going to vote for Kamala and vice versa.
Educated Republicans that are trending left. Then as you mentioned, the 1st district, which is Iowa City, which has a college, but then also some of rural, kind of eastern Iowa and some other of the smaller cities out there.
And the Quad Cities.
Quad Cities, Davenport. That had a big lead for the Democrats. And so I do wonder, do you look at that and think, I don't know, like this, I mean, obviously you're not going to change your results, but I just wonder if that 1st district congressional result gave you any kind of pause about the overall makeup of the state.
Well,
oh man, the replies, they're so upset, you guys. Are you kidding me? LMFAO, this is Cope. Clown, you're predicting Kamala. Bookmarking this to gloat to right-wingers. Okay, there we go. There's one. Explain this to me like I'm Ann Selzer. You caused all that drama to predict a Harris victory, but that's how you operate. Still love you, sir. Okay, so he's getting a lot of love there too, but the top 3 were pissed.
Keep in mind that we have been seeing something going on in the 1st district in terms of approval ratings, even for Joe Biden, for more than a year. And so when we would do briefings with the reporters and editors, I kept saying, what's going on in the 1st district? There's something going on in the 1st district. So this wasn't new, but it was something that caught our attention to have a lead that wide for some.
Hutch, how nervous are you? I'm not nervous. I don't know if I should be. Maybe I should be. I don't feel any anxiety today. Like none. I can't predict how I'm going to feel tomorrow. And I didn't take any Xanax today. I took no Xanax today. I can't predict how I'm going to feel when I wake up tomorrow. Chances are I'll probably feel a little bit nervous tomorrow. But I am so at peace right now, which is surprising to me. I thought I would be nervous today. And really, I'm excited. That's my feeling right now. That's my honest answer for how I feel right now. Is I feel very eager to get to tomorrow because I feel confident about this race. Talk to me again when I fire up the stream mañana. We'll see how that goes. But today, I don't feel anxious. I don't feel any anxiety today.
Someone from the opposing party. So we gave that extra attention and looked at it several different ways. And in the end, we had no reason to doubt. And keep in mind, we weight by geography as well. So there wasn't a way for us to be over-representing that district unless they're more in that district intending to vote.
So you said Monday night the unweighted was showing good stuff for Harris. When you saw the final numbers, which I guess would have been what, Friday morning? I'm just curious, what was your mental state there? Did you have any? Were you starting to sweat at all looking at it? Did you look at it 2 times like I did and say, wait, she's really winning by 3?
We watch it day by day, so it was an incremental.
Hutch, do you think the Trump and Epstein stuff will hurt Trump? I don't think. Listen, I think the things that are going to hurt Trump this week are the comments about Puerto Rico. That seems to have had an impact. Many pollsters are presenting data that suggests that this did actually get through to a lot of Hispanic voters, particularly Puerto Rican voters. And in a state like Pennsylvania, where there's 500,000, that's kind of a big deal. His response to Joe Biden's garbage comments, ironically, actually played into the Puerto Rico joke, because in his attempt to sort of like be ironic, when he put on a garbage man outfit and was driving around, there were a lot of Hispanic voters that interpreted that to mean he was doubling down on the Puerto Rico joke. Do you guys follow me on that one? So Trump was trying to bring attention to something that Biden said. He tried to make it like a deplorables moment that Hillary had in 2016. They were trying to change the narrative about that week. And so Donald Trump, Joe Biden was talking about one specific supporter's racist joke. He wasn't talking about supporters broadly. But Donald Trump put on a garbage man outfit and literally drove around in circles in a garbage truck. And a lot of Puerto Rican voters thought that he was doubling down on the joke. They didn't know that he was referencing what Biden said, which is pretty hilarious.
Mental difference on Friday morning.
What did Shane Gillis have to say about it?
I can't get Hinchcliffe off the brain, dude. Bro. That's all I think about. It makes me laugh.
It's the funniest thing ever.
It's the funniest thing that's happened.
If Trump loses, it's the ultimate.
And it is Tony's fault. And because of that, World War III does take place. Tony Hinchcliffe is Archduke Franz Ferdinand.
I'm going to be holding my whole family, and I'm going to see the blast radius before we go out in a hot flash. I'm going to go, an island of garbage?
You can see the blast radius, you're going to go, unbelievable. Just go into duh.
That's great.
I will say that my nephew is a senior at the University of Nebraska and currently interning at Gallup.
Shane Gillis is funny as he's so goddamn funny. His show on Netflix was I didn't think it was very good. The Tires Show or whatever. I thought that was like not great. But yeah, Shane Gillis is like he's like effortlessly funny. Like I feel like he's just one of those guys. Like he reminds me of Sark in terms of like how effortless he makes it look.
Interestingly enough, and he wanted to come, and I wanted to have him here for this. And he walked in Thursday night, and I had a folder. I had to swear him to secrecy. Yeah. He has to take the oath. And he opened the folder, and he couldn't believe what he was looking at, and his mouth sort of fell down to the kitchen counter. and it took him a while to wrap his head around it. So, you know, you're not alone in, first of all, not recognizing what the poll numbers meant, because your expectation was for a completely different difference. We do a preliminary briefing with the reporters and editors on Thursday. By the time we got there Friday, there was, you know, we're settled on a plan of action for how to get the stories out, and I think I'd answered all of the questions people had about how could this be to their satisfaction, and now the voters will tell us.
Subscribed.